Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another weather forecast here by Agent Weather Forecast. And this is going to be a video here, continue to talk about the potential for a major tornado outbreak and severe weather event tomorrow. And as well, we're going to be talking about as well the severe weather threat potentially as well, not only for today, but as well, even as well, talking about Thursday. So we have a pretty big 3-day events, one in the South Central, which is today, one in the Dixie Alley, which is tomorrow, and then one in the Southeastern Coast, which will be Thursday. So we got already a lot to talk about here. Specifically, though, we're going to be focusing on tomorrow, as we now have a moderate risk issued, and there's a potential very good chance that a high risk could be issued here, which will be our first high risk of the year and our first high risk in quite a while here. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the forecast. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell icon and the like button if you haven't already done so. But let's go ahead and jump to the forecast. So this is now a look at the day one outlook. So this is mainly focusing on today. And as you see, we now have another enhanced risk issued here. And this is going to be shockingly for today. So I don't think we all really saw an enhanced risk being issued by today, but we did get one. An enhanced risk has not been issued there for about 263,000 people, just around that range. And the biggest cities in this enhanced risk includes Arkansas City, Kansas, Woodward, Oklahoma, Winfield, Kansas, Ponca City, Oklahoma, and Enid, Oklahoma. So, everything Enid, you guys were in the potential. I think you guys were in the moderate, or no, you guys were in the enhanced risk last weekend where you saw a big tornado outbreak in Texas. So it's another big enhanced risk there, portions of the South Central, and a very, very widespread slight risk. And we're going to be as well even watching portions of Western Dixie Alley throughout this evening here. And that's going to be a slight risk has been issued for about 20 million people. So that's a very, very widespread slight risk for today, including all the way down to San Antonio, Texas, Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, as well, including areas like Shreveport, just north of Jackson, Mississippi, Oklahoma City, and as well just south of Kansas City. So we're seeing this severe weather starting to really ramp up. Ever since this tornado outbreak we saw in Texas, it's been getting really active, and we're not even getting the worst. I mean, tomorrow is going to be absolutely mental, and I am planning on streaming this tornado outbreak throughout tomorrow all evening long. So this is now, we're going to be looking at the tornado threats here, and we have a 5% chance, which is a slight risk for tornadoes here, and that's going to be very widespread across areas all the way from Mississippi all the way across portions of Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and as well southern Arkansas. So we have a very widespread 5% chance for tornadoes as well. So we got to really watch out for today's threat as well, not just tomorrow. So we do have about 12.4 million people under the slight risk for tornadoes, which is a 5%. And that's including Dallas, Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Arlington, as well as other areas across those brown regions and the map. And then we have the wind threat there at a 15% chance. We have a very, very widespread slight risk for winds all the way from Texas there up to Kansas, and as well another small area, 15% chance there. And that's kind of the reason why the slight risk has been extended all the way down to areas like Mississippi, Louisiana, and as well Arkansas as well, because the 5% chance for the winds. And as well, we also have, not 5% chance for winds, 5% chance for tornadoes. And this is the reason why we have enhanced risk today, because we have a 30% chance, significant risk across these areas, of course. But we have the specific 30% chance where we have the enhanced risk, but we do have a significant risk for, or I guess a severe risk for the winds across areas of Texas there, and as well portions of Oklahoma and Kansas. But right there in that 30% chance, significant risk, that does include Enid, Ponca City, Winfield, Woodward, Arkansas, and that's around 260,000 people like we mentioned. And then for significant severe risk, we have about 3.4 million people, and that's including Oklahoma City, Wichita, Norman, Wichita City, and Lawton, Oklahoma there. So we do definitely have a very good chance for hail to occur today. So this is now going to be specifically for this evening here for the severe weather. So the next few hours here. So let me actually go ahead and move this ever so slightly. So of course we're going to start seeing some really severe storms across portions of the far northwestern Oklahoma there, where we do have the enhanced risk. And that's going to develop some potential linear storms across the region here, developing the western Oklahoma and gradually making their way eastward. But of course, as we're going to see some widespread severe weather generally across the whole south central today, very widespread warm temperature. So we are going to start seeing some storms really blowing up out of nowhere here, specifically in these areas as well. Going to start being anomalous storms to blow up across this general region here. As we now get later into tomorrow morning, the storms should die off, of course. So it's only be a few hours threat right now. So we are going to see some spotty cells across Mississippi, Alabama, in the next few hour or so. And later on this evening, almost at dusk, really, we're going to start seeing those really big storms in Oklahoma, where we do have the enhancers. The biggest threat, though, of course, is the hail. And of course, we only have a 5% chance for tornadoes. But again, a 5% chance sounds low, but a 5% chance is a pretty decent chance for tornadoes, actually. 5% chance isn't guaranteed a tornado, but it also doesn't guarantee not getting a tornado, even though it sounds like a very low number. But so now that we check the look now at the actual radar here, let's go ahead and look at the Cape values and why these storms are going to be kind of popping up every so widespread, including portions, of course, of western Dixie, like northern Louisiana, Mississippi there, and even portions of Arkansas, but we do have that slight risk as well. But Cape values will start to increase very soon in the next few hours. There you can kind of see those good 2,200 joules per kilogram, even a little area right here of just under 3,000 joules per kilogram. So we're going to be seeing some decent numbers here. That's all going to be mainly a result of the really warm temperatures that we're seeing right now currently across the south central as highs in the mid 70s and even upper 70s. As we get later, far to almost dusk at this point tonight, we're going to see some very high Cape values here, up to around 3,000 joules per kilogram there in upper Texas, in another region right there in far southern Texas. It's kind of a very widespread area of some very good values of some Cape. So we're going to really be watching out for some severe storms to pop up on and off across the general region here later this evening. And then, of course, that will die off, but then that'll really increase by tomorrow, late morning, and then it'll kind of just blow up after that into the afternoon hours. Looking at the supercell composite parameter here for this evening as well, we are going to be seeing a very high number here, or not a very high number, but a moderate number here, a 14.2 reading there, and the border with Mexico for some supercells develop. And we have some lower numbers across Mississippi, Louisiana, scattered areas of Texas that can get around a 4 or 5 on the SCP. So fairly watch out for some scattered supercells to possibly develop, not only in Texas and Oklahoma today, but as well Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. But that will kind of gradually die off, specifically by after tonight. But we are going to be seeing up to a 23 reading here on far southwestern Texas there. So we got to really watch out for some potential severe storms in this general region to develop. And of course, these readings will definitely increase by tomorrow on the supercell composite parameter. Now, taking a look at the STP, or significant tornado parameter. It's going to be measuring the probability of significant tornadoes to develop here. So this is going to scale from anything less than a 1 to well over past 10. So we're going to be seeing a pretty decent reading here up to a 6 there in far southern Texas. So that's kind of going to really watch out between the next few hours. We have some very good Cape values. We have a pretty good reading there on supercell composite parameter, and we're even going to get possibly a 10.2 reading on the significant tornado parameter. That's a very good chance for tornadoes to develop in the region. And of course, that'll likely die off within the next few hours here. So really, the threat isn't going to be too necessarily severe. It's going to be mainly a hail threat today, and even some winds. However, there could be a spotty tornado. Maybe I don't see us getting more than 2 or 3 tornadoes this evening here. But if they do happen, I do believe they'll be very brief, and got to really keep in mind for Oklahoma specifically. So this is now a look at the day 2 outlook, and as you see, there's this very widespread moderate risk here, all the way from Arkansas there, Louisiana, Tennessee, and much of Mississippi and Alabama, just like I expected here. So actually, my map yesterday wasn't too far off. However, I did put the moderate risk a little too far south in my forecast. But other than that, I actually feel pretty confident in my map from yesterday, which kind of makes me a little bit more confident for my maps that I will have in the video today, predicting the potential outcomes for what we can see by day 1, which is going to be tomorrow. But the moderate risk that has been issued by the SPC, that includes about 8.1 million people. So that's a very widespread amount of people across Dixie out there. So that's going to be including in big cities like Memphis there, Birmingham, Montgomery, Little Rock, and Jackson. But as well going to be including areas like Hattiesburg. And as well going to be including areas like Tupelo there as well, near Huntsville. And then the enhancers, as well as a result to the moderate risk being issued, has actually become a bit more widespread now, stretching into portions of Texas there, stretching further into the Florida Panhandle, stretching further into as well Georgia, and as well even moving up all the way up to portions of southern Missouri like I expected here. So the enhancers actually includes less people than the moderate risk, and they only have 5.4 million people. And that's going to include some big cities like Shreveport there, Mobile, Columbus, Georgia, Huntsville, Alabama, and Jackson, Tennessee. So if you're in the orange risk in game, which is the enhanced, I do recommend you guys have a plan for tomorrow because it's going to be very, very severe in your general region. As well, the moderate risk, I would definitely have a tornado plan. I would definitely make sure you have, if you can't afford a generator, I will have flashlights, all that, because you're in the moderate risk for a reason, and you have a very, very good chance for extreme hail, dangerous wind, as well a very great probability for tornadoes. I believe the 15% chance hatch risk, which is not something you want to see whatsoever. The slight risk is a lot more widespread there. 14.7 million people there, includes New Orleans, Atlanta, Baton Rouge, Chattanooga, and Springfield region. And the margin risk is going to be including around 13 million people. But the tornado threat is very, very high. 15% chance hatch risk. So the 50% chance in general includes areas like Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery, Little Rock, Jackson, that red color. But that little black line here with the dash, that's the hatch risk or the significant severe risk. And that's going to be including around 9.4 million people, including Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery, Little Rock, and Jackson, Mississippi there. So this is going to definitely be the big area right here to watch for tornadoes throughout tomorrow. So very widespread, which is why I'm going to be streaming for hours after I get home tomorrow. And let's go ahead and take a look at the wind threat now. Very widespread as well. 30% chance hatch risk, and that's going to be including the significant severe or hatch is going to be including around 10.3 million people. Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery, Little Rock, Jackson. So you're hearing the same names over and over again. So definitely got to really watch out. If you're in much of Alabama, far western Georgia, almost all of Mississippi, much of western Tennessee, much of eastern and central Arkansas, much of northern Louisiana, and much of far southeastern Missouri, I recommend you guys definitely have a plan because you guys are either an enhanced or moderate, and who knows, some of those areas that I just mentioned, one of those areas, like such as Alabama, Mississippi, could be under high risk if they issue it tomorrow. Looking at the hail threat, again, very widespread hail threat, 30% chance hatch risk, kind of maintaining kind of more towards the Mississippi River Basin there, but with the 30% chance general risk extending all the way up into western Georgia. So with a 30% chance for hail to extend possibly to Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery, Shreveport, and Mobile. And I do think that the reason we could possibly get a high risk tomorrow is either possibly the tornado risk getting getting upgraded, or possibly the hail threat maybe getting upgraded to a 45% chance hatch risk, because I do see significant hail. Definitely, I mean, I would not doubt we get baseball-sized hail at some point. And of course, we can't forget about the day 3 outlook here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the day 3 outlook here. So again, looking at some storms as well, including not only tomorrow and today, but as well into portions of Thursday. We have a very widespread enhanced risk there, all the way from southwestern Georgia up to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, next to the border with Virginia. So we have a very widespread enhanced risk as well tomorrow. Or sorry, not tomorrow, Thursday. This enhanced risk does include around 16.5 million people, including Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, Durham, and Savannah, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia is just outside the enhanced risk there. And so is Jacksonville. The slight risk is having around 1 million people there, including Jacksonville, Virginia Beach there as well, possibly into Charleston, West Virginia, Atlanta, Tallahassee. So it's going to be more of a coastal threat, really, the enhanced risk necessarily, but just a general southeastern storm right here, kind of outside Dixie, kind of outside the mid-Atlantic, and kind of outside the general area of Florida. So really going to be watching out, necessarily in my opinion, I'm going to really be watching out for the Outer Banks, as well as going to be really watching out for central Georgia and portions of southern South Carolina. Those are kind of my areas to really watch out for Thursday. So here's now a look at the radar here for tomorrow. So this is actually getting into early tomorrow morning here. Starting to see some storms brewing up. I believe this is it says 6 a.m. here. So this is 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. You guys are getting some really heavy rain by noon tomorrow across areas of Georgia, portions of Tennessee, some possibly some small severe thunderstorms across the areas like Jackson, Tennessee, and portions of Memphis. But as we get into the early afternoon, those storms will start to brew up there. With the really high Cape values and a ton of moisture, we're going to start seeing these storms just brewing and popping up out of nowhere here, and just going to be very, very severe here. So we're going to be seeing some very widespread storms by around, I think this is around 3 p.m. across areas like Alabama. And as we now get later into the evening hours here, this is going to be, I believe, around 5-ish p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be extremely dangerous here at this point, this time frame. We're going to be seeing extreme severe weather with a potential massive squall line across Mississippi there into Louisiana and Tennessee. Tennessee with some scattered potential. Maybe we can see some potential supercells developing just ahead of the big squall. And so we're looking at a very widespread threat, including mainly Tennessee, western Tennessee specifically, much of Alabama, western Georgia, much of Mississippi, northern Louisiana, as well eastern Arkansas. And that'll continue overnight there into early Thursday morning. That severe weather will continue throughout portions of southern and central Alabama, pushing its way to Georgia. Some severe weather across Atlanta, as well. Going to start seeing a big squall line to make its way towards areas like Tallahassee, Valdosta, Columbia, Augusta, Georgia. This is going to be by Thursday, so we're going to start seeing some pretty significant storms there, making its way into Thursday across areas like the Big Bend region there, far eastern Georgia, like Savannah, getting to the Great Barrier Islands there, getting near Charleston, even including Florence, South Carolina. So all these are just going to pop up out of nowhere early tomorrow afternoon because of the really high Cape values here. So getting to tomorrow morning here, 8 a.m., the Cape values will be kind of decent, mid thousands, getting to 1,500, 1,700, but even getting near 2,200 in areas like Louisiana. But these numbers just absolutely blow up here. You're going to see some very widespread numbers of over 3,000 joules per kilogram, but a very just widespread number in general with some very high Cape values, including as well Arkansas right there outside that main region of the very high Cape values. That's going to continue to increase. They're getting near 3,300 joules per kilogram there across areas like Georgia, Mississippi there, Tennessee, and far southern Missouri. So it's going to be very widespread with the extreme heat we're going to be seeing throughout tomorrow's, as the highs will be in the 70s and 60s for some areas. It's going to really allow for these really high Cape values. And we actually may even see some 80s across Alabama and Mississippi. So that's going to kind of be a result of that really just jumping extreme increase in the Cape values. Now looking at the SCP or the supercell composite parameters. So we're going to be seeing by tomorrow early afternoon, we're going to be seeing some decent numbers there between a 4 and a 5 and even 6 there across Alabama, Mississippi. With those higher numbers as in the early afternoon, the main threat will kind of be Arkansas, far western Tennessee, Louisiana, and even portions of Oklahoma by tomorrow early afternoon. That's going to be as a result because of those SCP numbers kind of being more towards 10, even 9 across those general states here, and a lot lower once you get to Dixie Alley. But as I get further into the afternoon hours, those numbers will start to blow up across Alabama and Dixie Alley. I can be seeing some very big numbers popping up across Alabama, popping up across Mississippi, popping across Arkansas and northern Louisiana. We may actually see over 14 on the SCP scale. And you can kind of see right there towards northern Louisiana, we actually have a 17 on the reading here. Getting later on throughout the storm, we're actually getting now up to a 23 on the reading here. Going to be very widespread across the Mississippi River Basin there. Some spotted regions across Mississippi, some spotted regions there in far eastern Alabama. Very widespread region there towards Arkansas, Tennessee, and Missouri border. We're going to be seeing possibly over possibly a 25 on the reading. And then this will continue with a big squalling coming up. We're going to see up to a 30 on the reading, including Alabama right there, a 30.4 right there in northern Alabama, and it's going to continue to increase. They're not getting near possibly a 31 right there to Alabama, Mississippi. So it's going to be a very, very widespread threat, and that's going to continue and kind of make its way and decreasing to Georgia. There we actually make it around a 14 or 15 reading once it gets to Georgia, and that's kind of what we only have an enhanced risk for the far western part of the state. Now looking at the STP or significant tornado parameter for these regions, of course that kind of will start to blow up by early tomorrow or afternoon across this general region in the south central. Gonna get anywhere from 2 to 2.5, but our highest reading will be around a 4.5 on the STP scale across areas of Arkansas, but of course it will gradually increase once we get towards the kind of late evening hours and get around a 6 there on the STP scale for Mississippi there. And even scattered regions where we actually make it 7 or something like that. So it's going to really have to keep in mind that we actually may see some significant tornadoes. And I know 6.5 doesn't sound like a lot, but out of I believe 12 or 13, that's pretty decent chance for some big tornadoes here. So we got to really keep this in mind. Alright guys, so this is my map of what I think could happen if the high risk is not issued tomorrow. So again, I think there's a 50-50 chance that a high risk could be issued or not issued. I personally am starting to lean toward possibly having a high risk, but again, I'm not super confident when I say that, but I do think I'm leaning now more toward a higher probability of a high risk actually being issued. And the SPC just mentioned in their last mesocyclone update, and of course as well, sorry, not the mesocyclone update, but their latest, I believe it was a 12Z update, that there could actually be quite a good chance for a high risk if these conditions continue to be forecasted. But as you see in the marginal there in the dark green, I do expect it to push to kind of stay where it is, mainly according to the SPC. But I'm really focused kind of more towards the enhanced and moderate risk there. So I do think tomorrow, if the high risk is not issued, I think things will stay mainly the same. However, I do think an enhanced risk could push its way kind of towards New Orleans there. Mobile under enhanced risk. And I do think Atlanta may have a chance to be under an enhanced risk. I do think they'll kind of push that threat more towards the east. Columbia, Poplar Bluff areas into Texarkana, Shreveport. I think you guys have a very good chance to kind of stay in the enhanced risk there as well. I do as well expect the moderate risk to push its way more towards the east a little bit and more towards the south if the high risk is not issued. So instead of actually issuing a high risk, I just, if it doesn't happen, they may just make the moderate risk more widespread. So I do think this moderate risk could be kind of pushed more towards areas near the Gulf Coast there, making its way into western Georgia, Huntsville, Birmingham, Selma, Memphis, Little Rock, Tupelo, Jackson. You guys most likely will stay in the moderate risk, but I just think it's going to be very widespread. They're pushing into far southern Missouri, pushing more towards closer to Columbia, Tennessee, pushing more into much of western Tennessee, and as well pushing more towards the west and much of north central Louisiana as well. But this is what I think could happen if the high risk is issued here. So these are, if the pink there obviously represents the high risk, and if the high risk is issued, again, not a guarantee, I think if it gets issued, it'll be most likely where I have it in this map, kind of more towards far eastern Arkansas, far northern Louisiana, and much of central and northern Alabama and Mississippi is there. So that's kind of where I think the high risk will be issued if it does get issued. I think it'll be mainly in this location, including Birmingham, Selma, Jackson, Tupelo. I think it's going to be very widespread, not like a small little dot in a little rural area. I think it's going to be very widespread, crossing possibly 4 states: Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. If a high risk is get issued, I think it won't be too far from Memphis. I don't think it'll be too far from Montgomery. However, I just kind of see those higher chances for tornadoes, hail in general, all that kind of sticking around in that Mississippi, Alabama, far eastern Arkansas, and far the tip there of Louisiana to be under high risk. But I hope you guys enjoy the video, and see you guys tomorrow. And of course, I will be live streaming. I don't have the exact date when I'll be streaming, depending when I get home, but I will be streaming for sure. But see you guys later.